Okay, good. Let's get into this real quick. This video is about essentially emergency message 25046. It was originally created, or effective date anyways, of 8/1/25. So basically a little bit over a week ago. In this emergency message, the SSA released basically the outline for how they're going to be accessing bank accounts in the future. Now, when I originally did a video on this, a lot of people didn't understand the full context of which programs applied, what was happening, and what was going to be happening in the future. So I'm doing this as a follow-up video to help people understand specifically how this emergency message will actually apply to you, if it applies to you. So the main thing is this. This is all happening to SSI people. And the fear is that retirement disability insurance benefits into the future will be means tested, and that they will then apply it to other individuals who are in other programs. All right, so let me break it down so that everybody's on board with exactly how this works. There are main programs of Social Security. A lot of people call Social Security retirement and think that's it. Social Security is not just retirement. Retirement's the largest program, but is not the only one. There's a lot of them. There's all kinds in there. There's DAC benefits, SSI benefits, widows benefits, ex-spousal benefits. There's all kinds of programs in Social Security. The main one that this is affecting are old, impoverished, supplemental security income recipients. All right, so who are these people? These people are different than retired people because they are retired, but not on classical Title II retirement. They are instead on Title 16 retirement. What's the difference? Title II retirement is where you paid in over your life, paying FICA taxes, and then kind of got a shitty little check every month, once you hit a certain age and chose to take your retirement benefits. That's traditional retirement, right? Nobody's happy with it because of the problem of it not being enough money per month because they didn't handle investments properly with the money that they took from you. Okay, so that's classical retirement. This is not applied to classical retirement yet. The argument and suggestions that we have seen from politicians is that because the trust funds will eventually run out, we're looking at 2033-ish, potentially even 2032. And the problem we have is that if you look at the statistical nature of how the actuaries at the SSA actually calculated it, what happened is the main problem, unfortunately, is that they miscalculated everything based off of one of the most important numbers called fertility rate. What is fertility rate? Fertility rate is the rate of how many children were made per female in America. And we're talking about American females. So if you're an American woman, right, they measure how many kids have come from your body, right? And so the idea of it is you have to produce children to have a nation that will succeed. If you don't produce enough children, then not enough workers are created to pay taxes, in this case called FICA taxes. FICA taxes are what essentially we pay when we work to one day have access to regular disability benefits, regular retirement benefits, stuff like that. Now, some Americans, they never work that much, let's put it this way. They never work at all. They don't work that much, or they work mostly under the table. And when that occurs, the main thing you have to keep in mind is this, okay? Structurally, those people don't have enough paid in, and they don't have enough quarters of coverage. Once again, quarters of coverage. When they don't have enough quarters of coverage, that creates a problem because they can't access their Title II benefits, which are the pay to play benefits. Those are the benefits where you worked hard, you paid in, and now you get something back, albeit it's not much. Now, the other people, the SSI people, the supplemental security income people, these are people who have never worked, not worked much, or worked mostly under the table, or they basically are immigrants. Okay, so let me explain to you the three main categories of how people get a free check from, and it's not really free, I mean, we all paid for it, but how people get a check from the federal government for not doing anything, right? Because they get it because they're impoverished or an immigrant. So the three ways that they get one of these checks. Number one is if they become disabled but haven't worked much, worked at all, or worked under the table. Number two, they're over 65 and impoverished. and don't have much money or assets or anything, no resources, right? Everything, they have less than $2,000 in resources, stuff like that. They're poor. They're impoverished, okay? And then number three, the thing that seems to get people pretty pissed off, and I understand why, is that at the end of the day, we also give a lot of money to immigrants through Social Security. And it's called supplemental security income for entrants. Entrants are usually categories of people known as refugees, asylum seekers, and those who've been trafficked. So the bottom line is, those are the people who get a supplemental security income check. It is a check that we all paid for while working, and they get to have that check. Now, are SSI people evil? No, absolutely not. A lot of them are Americans where they became disabled, before they could even work. A lot of them are Americans where they didn't have opportunities to go work. They lived in areas where there just were no jobs. Yes, there are people who are drawing off the system in a welfare-like state. I get it. I'm not going to argue against that with, you, because I won't win that argument. But the point is this. Not all SSI people are what you think they are. Some of them are very, very good people. And, you have to kind of remember there's gray area in this situation. Now, with that said, this access to bank accounts pertains to SSI people. The new rule where they get rid of the restriction as to how often they have to check it and, basically gives them full access to just check it whenever they want. That is applying to old SSI recipients. Okay. Once again, old SSI recipients. Now, what does this rule do? I'm going to read to you specifically from emergency message 25046. Again, remember, this is a back office document. This is meant for the employees of the SSA. So if you look here, specifically on it, it says intended audience. Okay. Intended audience, right here. All RCs, ARCs, ADs, FOs, TSCs, OCOs, OCO, CSTs, and FOSUs. So back office personnel, front office personnel, regional office personnel of the SSA. This document is not meant for you. You're not supposed to be studying this. You're not supposed to be learning this. This is not something that you're supposed to get access to in the immediate sense of a quick Google search and stuff like that. You have to search basically the Social Security Administration's emergency messages and go to the website where basically they post this that goes to these individuals that was originated by their policy department, OISP. Okay. So again, when I share this stuff with you, and I don't know why you put it in the comments, it kind of drives me up the wall. If I see a comment and it frustrates, I don't do anything with them, but if I see them, it gets me like, what the hell? A lot of you will put a comment online or in the chat that you didn't see this on CNN or you didn't see it on Fox News. You ain't never going to see it on CNN or Fox News for the things that are smaller details released for back office information, unless the news cycle picks it up and it gets enough views from the internet for them to then post it on here. Okay, Elon didn't touch this. Trump didn't touch this. It's just not something they're going to do because it doesn't mean enough views. It doesn't have enough excitement for them to rattle the cage and beat the drum. So where are you going to see things about Social Security benefit updates? Fox? No, that would be incorrect. CNN? No, that would be incorrect. A YouTube channel for the most viewed and subscribed and clicked on disability attorney in America? Yes, that's where you would see it. Only the big Social Security details, the big changes, this is scary and we're going to get some views out of it. Only that stuff ends up on legacy news. Okay, that's how it works. So if you put a thing in there, I don't see it in Fox didn't. I didn't see it in CNN. Wall Street Journal didn't tell me this. That's because their thing is about the number of views that they can get when they publish it. That's not my thing. I just give you status updates on what's going on. That way you learn all the things that are occurring. All right, so let me read to you the purpose of this. Let's get right into it, okay? The purpose of this emergency message is to inform technicians of a new verification requirement for financial institutions, accounts, and access to financial institutions. The new policy applies to all SSI age 65 plus. Once again, SSI aged 65 plus, SSI AIs, that's what they call them, allowances, including SSI AI claims that require disability or blindness determination, multi-category eligibility, age spouse claims, SSI AI initial claim reopenings, and initial claim appeal reversals processed on or after A125, We expect to expand the scope of this new policy beyond SSI AI allowances, which serves as a starting point given the relatively low number of cases. All right, now let me explain that to you. Yes, for SSI purposes, they can get access to your bank account because you sign off on it and then you continue to go ahead and sign off on it. Excuse me, my voice. I'm kind of, all right, so here's what you need to know. When you fill out an SSI 8000 BK, you fill out a form applying for SSI benefits. Now, with SSI benefits, the way it works is that you tell them about what kind of bank accounts you have, what kind of money you have, what's going on, and then they go and snooker around and snoop around to see how much money you have, because you're not supposed to have more than $2,000. That is for SSI disabled people. That is for SSI old age people. That is for, although it's not as effective with everything, but that is for also SSI entrants, which are your immigrants and stuff like that. All right, so here's the deal. That gets tricky because remember, they have a lot of money flowing from different countries and stuff like that. So that's a trickier one. Now, with that said, okay, they're supposed to look at their bank accounts because they're supposed to see if they remain impoverished, because SSI is a program that does not allow you to receive a monthly check if at some point you start to do better in life. You have to always be doing very poorly in life to get an SSI check, because you always have to be poor to get an SSI check. Now, here's where this is happening. And I'm going to go through this so that everybody has an understanding. When they write in here, we expect to expand the scope of this new policy beyond SSI AI allowances, which serve as a starting point given the relatively low number of classes. Okay. What they're saying is, inside the spectrum of available SSI programs, the little pie chart piece, the tiny pie chart piece, are SSI 65 plus old age recipients. So they're going to start applying this where they can just do this auto access, auto review, not have the $400, squeeze rule in there. They're going to start doing this to that group because it's a smaller group and they're testing it out. This will then bleed into the other categories of SSI disabled people and SSI entrants, which are the immigrants, okay? Now, what are people worried about? Well, it's a slippery slope, okay? A lot of people don't want to have the SSA looking into their finances because, let's call it like it is, all of a sudden, you seem to be buying things that you couldn't afford, considering you're only having your income of retirement benefits, or you're only having your income of disability benefits. And I get it. It makes sense. I totally get it. I understand it. And I see Rev Girl said it's so intrusive. It is. So here's what's happening. And it was weird because I saw people trying to blame Trump for the intrusiveness of them trying to look at bank accounts. They've always been able to look at SSI bank accounts. They've always had that process. They're just changing how much access they have as a repetition function, right? How much they can just click and, here we go. Here's how often we can check it, things like that. Because when these AI systems come out, this is the beginning of them telling you, hey, when we have AI, it's going to check your bank accounts 24/7. It's just going to keep binging Bank of America, PNC, Wells Fargo. It's just going to keep pinging them and and checking over and over and over again, specifically where you guys are at. So the point that I'm getting at with this is, here's why people are upset. Here's why people are a little bit afraid. We know AI programs are coming in because one of the main functions that Donald Trump, president, wants from Frank Bisignano, super CEO from the banking industry, one of the big things that he wants Frank Bisignano to do is incorporate all these mega modernized systems into the government's Social Security Administration from the private market. Why? Because they're more efficient, they're faster, they use a lot of AI, they're just better programs, okay? So as a result of that, what's happening is people are now worried because of hey, wait a minute. If they're going to have pretty much unlimited, continuous, repetitive access to my bank account, and they're doing this to the old SSI people, when are they going to do the disabled SSI people? Probably in 2 years, probably somewhere around there. Might be sooner, might be later. But when are they going to do those immigrants who are getting all that money from general taxes that all these middle class are paying in? Probably about 2 years. Probably around 2 years is when that will actually be occurring. That's when that actually will happen. Okay. So you got to keep in mind something real quick. And I think this is important here. All right. At the end of the day, that is the full circle of SSI people that they will roll this program out on. Now, with that said, some people were in the chat in the comments saying and blaming Donald Trump for potentially having access to bank accounts. Now you got to remember, Donald Trump is part of the Republican Party, but he's not a traditional Republican. He's like a middle Republican, right? That's why the Republicans that are on the far right are attacking him, and also the ones that are on the far left are also attacking him. It's because he is in the middle politically, and these other groups are going after him because of that. Now, with that said, he's still a firm believer in you pay it in, you're supposed to get it back. That's the gig. That's the game. Whereas the Democrats are more of the belief of continuously trying to create welfare programs for the poor. Because remember, that's how they get a lot of their votes. A lot of their votes come from the poor. So when you look at the statistics here of who votes for who, you get a lot of military people, police officers, you get a lot of middle-class workers, you got a lot of upper-class workers. They're all going to vote Republican. And then you also get a lot of poor individuals, a lot of teachers, a lot of like more emotional jobs, right? You get more arts people, you get music people, you get video, cinematography, Hollywood people. They're all going to vote Democrat. So the whole thing here is when you look at it, right, which group is more likely to go ahead and create a system that says we need to give more to the poor? And that's almost always the Democrats, right? That's almost always the Democrats come in and say, hey, we need to create bend points in how we take from the middle class and take from the middle upper class and give it to the poor. We need to increase the money we take from the middle class, Robin Hood theory, and then give to the poor. So this is not like a Trump direction where this is all going to go in the direction of, them getting access to your retirement bank accounts and seeing what's going on and what you spend money on and who you give money to and stuff like that. Yeah, they could still get access because if they think there's fraud or if they think there's something going on, they're going to do that. And, there's a lot of problems going on in America, with some religious beliefs and things like that are, well, they're hostile. They're very hostile, So the bottom line is that they're going to have these programs going on in the background. Now, with that said, though, on the Democrat side, the Democrats, and from what I've been hearing, and it's not a popular thing with the middle class, which means it's just not going to pass. The middle class, they got student loans, they can't afford houses, they can't even afford a rent, their jobs aren't paying them enough. There's no way for them to get upgrades when it comes to climbing the corporate ladder. It's funny too, because when you talk to boomers are like, why don't you just work harder? And like they're actually working, a lot of them, more hours now and getting paid significantly less. And then the cost of houses, the cost of real estate, the cost of everything is just absolutely insane. And what's happening is the boomers are starting to be like, yeah, system's broken really bad. Like the Bidenomics whole feature just didn't work out. And again, I'm not trying to go after the Democrats. I'm just explaining, like, I think there's nobody that I can think of that will in the chat or the comments. I mean, maybe there'll be one, but there's nobody who will say Bidenomics was a success. It literally created a massive, massive inflation problem that then rolled into the food industry and the rent industry. So now my disabled, my retired can't even eat or get food, and a lot of them are having to sell their homes. So I don't think anybody who knows anything about economics believes that, Biden did well. You know what I mean? And then they point to Trump when COVID first hit and he spent all this money, which was pushed by the Democrats to do that. And he bent a knee to them. Now, you may have noticed in his second term, he doesn't give a bleep. He is not bending a knee at all to any of the Democrats because he knows there's no way to make them happy, right? From a Republican standpoint, from a Democrat standpoint, there's no way to make the other party happy. So they don't care anymore. They're not working. They're not even trying to do this whole, like, we're trying to work across the aisle. Let me give you a hug. They're not trying to do any of that crap anymore. It's over. That's over. So the point, and now they're throwing each other and trying to get each other put in jail. So, the whole point that I'm getting at with this is that what's happening is we have a trust fund problem. And a lot of you guys think that the trust fund problem is just going to have a solution. But I would raise this thought to you. 1983, they had the same problem. Since 1983, they also knew that they were going to have a problem in the future because they didn't know what was going to fluctuate and how it was going to hurt them. And now, in about 8-ish years, we know that the trust funds are going to fail. Now, you all believed, just like I did, that the federal government was going to be able to back what they were supposed to pay you. And that's why we chose the federal government to handle the investments. We now know that that was in fact a lie because they can't. They can't cover that many trillions of dollars because they're 36 trillion in debt. If we had no debt, what they could do is just take $2 trillion of debt against the treasury, put it into basically trust funds, and then spend that money on private markets and index funds and investments that make sense, and not do the total shit job they'd been doing with investing our money up to this point. And they could save the whole system and it wouldn't be a big deal and they could make it happen. However, the problem with this situation is that they can't print money and they can't go ahead and borrow more money because they are now at the point where Moody's will continue to reduce our worth as an investor. They will continue to lower our grade as to our capacity of the dollar being successful. And that's because our international trade and international currency interactions, our reserve currency is failing. And that's the sad part of it. Now, Trump is going around from country to country and using tariffs as a strong arm, making other countries do trade agreements. He's locking them in to protect our currency. If our currency did not have those trade agreements where he strong-armed them, then y'all would be paying $10 for a banana. So, and I don't know if you know economics. I don't know if you understand how it works. But the simplified version is a can of soup would be $10. And I don't think you guys would appreciate that because the moment our dollar devalues on an international landscape, we get hit hard real fast. I'm talking about massive issues where they would have to completely subsidize the largest portion of American humans to be able to feed them. Okay? It would immediately require some sort of, national monthly check, national bigger food stamp to go ahead and allow Americans to just survive. So if we didn't have these trade agreements being worked out, we would be in a much worse spot. And again, it's tough because everybody's at a different level of understanding economic policy. Some people understand it very well. Some people don't understand it very well. It's a problem. And at the end of the day, I see comments and I'm like, man, I don't know, and that's the thing is you're all at different education levels. It's okay. It's okay. But if you don't understand, basically how the dollar works, how we spread it all over the globe, how the globe now dictates how well the dollar is going to do, our ability to go ahead and buy products and sell products is relevant on an international. If you don't understand that, it's okay. Just understand if we don't have good trade agreements, if we don't have good shipping agreements, if we don't have good raw material agreements, then everybody has to go on food stamps for the most part, other than the super rich. Okay, that's the summary of what you have to keep in mind. Now, what's upsetting to people about this emergency rule, EM 25046, again, EM 25046, is that it gets the government loaded into the, position seat for driving to essentially get people to give them full bank access with continuous repetitive checking, right? They can keep checking on your bank account. They can have a server, ping your bank server, and boop, they know how much you've got. Now, on the Democrat side, they're leaning towards the idea of should retirement benefits in the future be set up more as, basically a situation of giving the poor more and giving the middle class and the wealthy less. Now, some of you will say, absolutely not. That's not what they're saying. And then I would have to retort, and please don't be that person, because it's just don't be that person. The Democrats have been pushing for over 30 years. Over 30 years, the idea of making the rich pay their fair share by getting rid of the FICA tax cap. Now, if you haven't thought about it, maybe you haven't, but it's really easy and clear for me to see. But then again, I live in this industry. But if you haven't thought about it, here's how it works. If you have people who put money in over their life, so they put money in over their life, the amount of money they put in grows, right? They work jobs, they pay FICA taxes. Cool. And if those people, right, make a certain amount and they have to keep paying FICA taxes, but people who earn over a certain amount, so let's say $176,000, okay? If those people who earn over $176,000, there's no more FICA tax. So they don't get hit with that extra big FICA tax. And so the Democrats are saying, make the rich pay their fair share. But what they're not telling you is that the rich don't actually gain any benefit from paying more FICA tax. Because remember, what the rich pay in is vastly more than the retirement checks that they get out of it, because the rich are paying for the poor, just like the middle class are paying for the poor. So what that is basically creating a welfare retirement system. If you pass that, you have created even more of a socialism welfare system for retirement. Now, not all socialism is bad. Our numbers at this point are terrible. The amount we pay in versus how much we get back is absolutely horrible. But if we go by the Democrats' plan to essentially go ahead and make the rich pay more FICA taxes, if you do not allow them to receive more benefits on top of what they pay in, then you have basically taxed them without any reason, without any proper representation. You've just taken more from them. You've created an even greater welfare system. Now, some of you are okay with that. But, there are consequences. Consequences such as they'll move out of this country. Okay? They will move their businesses out of the country. Now, some of you are going to say they're not going to do that. I would very easily point to California as a prime diamond-like example of a failed economy. California was set up to win everything, to beat everyone. They were set up to beat New York, Florida, Texas. All of those groups combined, they were set up because they were Silicon Valley. They were tech giants. They were innovation, mass achievers. And through their bad politics, now they're pushing lots and lots of groups and companies and money and employees out. And we know this because U-Haul has to charge people extra money to leave California because they have to pay somebody to drive the truck back, because ain't nobody going back to California. There's no reason to. It's far too expensive. They tax people way too much. It's a horrific place. It's not safe. Other than the beautiful climate, nobody would really want to be there at this point. You have some companies that have agreed to go ahead and support the economy of California because they're getting something else out of the deal. You see those deals on the news all the time, but that's the reality we face with California. It shoulda, coulda, woulda been the best of America. It shoulda, coulda, woulda been the thing that could afford whatever it wanted. But it was completely mishandled. And now we're in this spot where we don't know what to do with it, right? As a country, it's like, they got such crazy rules over there. How do we make it make sense anymore for them to go? It's like a diseased part, unfortunately, of America, where they just don't succeed the way they should. So now we look at this whole situation and we say, okay, are all Democrats like California? Well, some of them are, a lot of them are. It looks like the whole party's sliding into that situation. But the problem we keep facing is we are not supporting the middle class enough. We're not. So think about it for a moment. The middle class, they're constantly working. They earn their hourly wage. They earn their salary wage, right? And then a lot of the money they get gets fed into the poor and impoverished. Or basically, they don't get paid enough from the rich. So the problem is the middles are having to pay these two groups far too much, either from the rich and not receiving enough pay, or the poor and having to pay out too much because of the chart bend points, meaning the poor get a lot more money. So the bottom line is this, okay? The bottom line with this whole situation is the retired out there do not like the idea that the Democrats are saying, hey, look, we should go ahead and modernize retirement and make it more of a welfare system that's means tested. So if you have a house that you could potentially sell, right, then maybe you have too much. Or if you have a bank account with, let's say, $250,000 in it, maybe you have too much and we don't want to give you those retirement benefits. We would rather reduce your retirement benefits and then give a portion every month to impoverished people. Obviously that includes, immigrants and things like that, because that's the direction it was going. So a lot of people are not okay with that because they come from the old world, which is when you work hard, you get paid, and you get to keep your money. And that is probably the system that works probably the best and most efficient at getting people to actually achieve the most. Because the more you take away from somebody that works hard and earns, at the end of the day, they're less likely to want to achieve and try and do stuff. And as a result of that, it creates a person who becomes bitter towards the system, also known as and defined as the current American. Most Americans are rabid. They are pissed that they have to pay this much money in taxes and this much money in FICA and this much money is this. Most millennials do not believe that retirement benefits will be there for them when they get older. Yet they've been paying into them for 25 to 30 years for some of them. So the point is, just to kind of clarify things with this whole situation, at the end of the day, retired people do not want the federal government to keep passing emergency regulation changes for policy like this because they're worried that it will creep into their SSDI benefits, their retirement benefits. And remember, this isn't just a Social Security problem. You're going to be seeing stuff like this ultimately leach over to VA benefits, workers' comp benefits, LTD benefits, etc. So the thing that gets people upset about this whole situation is not what they just passed, right? Because they got to look into SSI accounts anyways. How often they look into them, what does it matter, right? What does it matter? They don't like where this is going, and they don't like the idea of having to basically increase taxes on people who are making money. Now, to be fair, if we are honest with each other about how you could fix this, how you could improve this, what you could do, the main thing, see, I see there, Bella Italian said, raise the FICA cap. No, don't. Absolutely do not, unless you want to make items more expensive, because they're just the business owners going to pass that along. Now, I'm okay with a little bit of raised FICA tax, but then you got to agree to pay the rich slightly more because you're now taxing them vast amounts of money and they're getting very little back in return. And remember, they own all the businesses. So those guys are just going to go ahead and say, cool, this is a new cost of business. We're going to lose about 15% over this. So, okay, let me give you an example. So let's bring out the calculator. I did this the other video. Let's do a quick calculator function. And again, a lot of people who say just raise the FICA tax, they don't really understand what the negativity of it is. And I do understand some of it, but they just don't understand the full negativity of it. But here's the bottom line. Let's say somebody earns $50 million. Okay, let me get this right in the calculator. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. All right, there we go. We got 50 million. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Cool. Now we multiply that, and let's just do 15% by 15%. So they would be paying somewhere around $7.5 million in additional taxes. Okay, so a rich person says, okay, so instead of getting my income of earned income of 50 million, right, of what I traditionally would get, and then they'd have to pay taxes on that, right? So they pay their, 40% taxes on that. Then on top of that, they would have around, be a little bit less because they take out some for the first 176,000, but they would lose around $7.5 million as a new potential loss. Once again, $7.5 million as a new potential loss off of their $50 million. That's just roundabout easy math, okay? So the point is now they have to say, okay, we have a new cost of doing business. That's going to cost us $7.5 million. So every time we sell a wristband or we sell a carrot or we sell a car or we sell a tractor or we sell a chemical spray or we sell this or we sell a that or we sell a TV or we sell a service, every time we do that, we now need to increase our prices by 15%. And the people who are going to be buying those are you. So the moment you raise the FICA tax cap, you will be seeing essentially a 15% increase. It's actually a little bit more than that across the board on products that you would normally buy. Now, I know what you're thinking. Well, I didn't think of that. Or, oh, that would have been, oh, no, that's not good. Da, 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 da. And that's why nobody is ever going to raise the FICA tax cap. It ain't never going to happen. The reason why it's never going to happen, very simply put, is because the Democrats have billionaires that put their butts in the chairs that let them be politicians. Those billionaires who earn lots of earned income do not want an additional FICA tax on all of that money they earn. So they can rah, 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 let's vote on it, rah, 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 all they want all day long, but it ain't never going to pass because it is cheaper for billionaire Democrat backing, sponsors to go ahead and sponsor a politician that does not want to pass this bill. Now, you guys will say, hey, wait a minute. Doesn't make sense. They've been rooting on this thing for decades. They've been rooting on this thing for decades. Yeah. And they've also been unsuccessful for a reason for decades. That's the reason why. All right, let me read to you the specific details from this. Now, guys, please remember, if you like these videos where I explain how it's actually happening, what he's actually doing, what's actually going on, please remember to like and subscribe, because a lot of you guys don't hit the like button, and it is what it is. Like, I can't do anything about it, but it's one of those things where it would help me out if you hit that like button. All right, let's rock and roll through this real quick. All right, so let's go through background. All right, AFI. All right, hold on. Let me give you a little more than that, because I want to get these terms out so you understand. Okay, so AFI stands for Access to Financial Institutions. That's how they basically access your bank accounts. Okay, that's how they click a button. It tells them how much you have in Chase and PNC and Bank of all that stuff. Okay, so let me read to you the purpose again. The purpose of this emergency message, it's a back office document from the SSA, from these guys right here, right there. Okay. All right. The purpose of this emergency message is to inform technicians of a new verification requirement for financial institutions, FI accounts, and access to financial institutions, AFIs. AFIs is the button they click to look at how much money you have. The new policy applies to all SSI age 65 plus allowances, including all SSI old age claims that require disability or blindness determination that's multi-category, age spouse claims, SSI AI initial claim reopenings, and initial claim appeal reversals processed on or after 8/1/25. So basically, old age people who are older than 65 plus, or their age spouses that get a check. We expect to expand the scope of this new policy beyond SSI AI allowances, which serve as a starting point given the relatively low number of cases. Okay, that's what they're saying. They're going to grow it into the other SSI categories. And the Democrats right now are trying to grow this into basically disability benefits and retirement benefits as well. Okay, because remember, with disability benefits, you could have $1 billion in the bank. You could. You just can't earn $1 billion each month or each year. Right? So regular disability benefits have an income limitation, whereas SSI benefits have an income and how much stuff you have limitation. And retired people, they don't have a bunch of limitations, but they did have a taxation, but then Trump got rid of a lot of that taxation. Okay. It's not totally gone, but it's much better than it used to be, which is weird. In 83, when they passed that, I was like, wow, they passed that, and they basically were saying, hey, you got to work hard your whole life, and then if you want to keep working, we're going to tax you more on the money you already paid in. Like, that's some double dipping shit right there. So, all right, here we go. Background. Access to your bank account improves our efficiency in obtaining evidence related to financial institution accounts and claims and post-eligibility workloads. So they're saying basically they want to get access to your bank account so they can figure out what's going on in your account to figure out how much money you have if you're an SSI person. Accessing your bank account also reduces SSI payment errors and improper payments related to financial account balances and undisclosed accounts. We generally request access to financial institution verifications when an individual alleges $400 or more in liquid resources during initial claims, redeterminations, and limited issues. However, for redeterminations and limited issues in which resource-related diary is present, we request AFI verification without regard to the liquid resource verification tolerance. So in other words, what they're saying is they don't care if you tell them an amount, right? They don't care. You could say $0, you could say $5, you could say $50, but now they got tap button, tap button, tap button, because this sets them up to have a server with AI ping it and just say, hey, we don't care about this $400 rule. We care specifically about this other thing, which is essentially, basically, I'm just checking. Hold on, I see something going on here, which is essentially, right, your ability to go ahead and have money and our ability to check how much money you have and then make a decision on whether or not we should give you money. So I wanted to clarify this rule so that you understand. Currently, SSI old people, they're going to check on their account, probably set up artificial intelligence to mass click it, and they'll know immediately when you have too much money. That will spread to SSI disabled people who are under 65. That will spread to SSI entrants, which are all those immigrants, okay? Now, bottom line is this will probably at some point spread very easily to regular disabled people. Okay, so probably 2 years, it'll spread to all the rest of the SSI people. Probably it'll spread to SSDI people if we get a Democrat in the future and we lose, the Republicans, they'll probably go into that function. Remember, okay, Democrats are very okay with. I'm not trying to shoot anybody in the foot here. I'm not trying to do that, but these are the rules and the bills and the regular. Schumer just released a bill on this. I did a video on it where they're trying to go ahead and tax the rich more to pay for more of the retired and disabled, etc. But then the retired and disabled are going to pay a 15% increase in the products because the people who own all the businesses that stay in America are the rich. But nobody talks about that. It just doesn't end up on Fox News, doesn't end up on MSNBC, none of that stuff. So no. So AM said SSDI doesn't allow more than $2,000 in the bank. That's inaccurate. SSI doesn't allow more than $2,000 in the bank as a resource limit. SSDI, you can have $1 billion in the bank. You could have $1 million in the bank, etc. You can have lots of money. It's just with SSDI benefits, the work to earn disability benefits program, you can't be earning more than SGA, the $1,610 per month, right? Because you're disabled. You can't work. That's the whole point of the program. So with that said, okay, now that I've explained this, you have a better understanding of it. I wanted to clarify it because people who are retired kept saying, hey, what the hell? They're going to get access to my bank now? That's unfair. No, it's just for retired SSI recipients. So I mean, still for a category of retired. It's not all retired. However, this is likely to become all retired if they keep pushing this agenda of trying to say, how much do you have? And therefore, should we give you your full retirement check amount? Because when the trust funds fail, and they're going to fail before they say they will, because they're claiming that the fertility rate's 1.9, fertility rate's around 1.6. So they got a major number incorrect in their calculations. So as a result of that, the chart, where they're like, everything's going to be cool for a while. It's not. It's going to dive faster. Okay. So the point with this whole thing, just so you understand it, and I want you to be very, very clear on this, okay? And I want you to understand it because this is important. When it comes to this situation and the trust funds start to, truly run out and people are getting around a quarter less of their retirement check per month, I've heard things of 18%, I've heard things of 25%, etc. But when people face that moment, and if Democrats are in office, they will likely try to tax the rich and then claim anybody who has enough resources should not get their full retirement check so that they can give more money to the poor, people who don't have a house, people who don't have a car, stuff like that. But I can see the directional faction, the opportunity here for basically a more liberal socialism based program where they'll say, hey, look, you have a rental home, you don't get retirement. You have one house, we're going to reduce your retirement by this amount. You have 2 cars in your name, we're going to reduce your retirement by this amount. I can see them beginning to do that because they can't afford to save the program. $36 trillion in debt. You can't borrow, you can't print money. Moody's is already reducing our actual rating. So as a country. So that's what is scary about this, is that at the end of the day, the middle class that spent their whole life paying into this process that's now retired, they're like, whoa, buddy. Now, look, let's just be fair about politics here. Okay. Let's just be fair about, how this all goes on. Okay. The reality with this situation, the reality with this whole moving forward process is that we as Americans don't make as much as we should or could by what they need us to. So when you think about it, we don't have jobs that pay us enough. We don't have jobs that make enough money for them to tax enough away from us. And that's the politicians' big complaint with the middle class. That's why a lot of them make fun of millennials and like, boy, you guys sure can't do anything. Well, the boomers did sell a lot of our manufacturing, businesses and raw material production overseas. So to be fair, the millennials are the result of the boomers, quite genetically and literally. So, the point that I'm getting at here with this whole situation at the end of the day, you know what I mean, is that we can beat up, right, this wealthy group, right, and say, oh, we should take more from them, take more from them, take more from them. We could do that. But just realize that whatever we take from them, they own the businesses. It's a business write-off. They're just going to go ahead and find a way to charge it to us in another way. So that's just what I need you to understand about this, is that, it's like a stimulus check from COVID. You're just going to end up spending and paying a lot more money down the line. And you're going to be doing it, and it's going to take more money from you than just the stimulus you got. And remember, too, America has a real big problem with welfare because we just can't afford it like we can. And the major issue that we face is that people who can't afford kids keep having kids. And then those kids don't get educated or have a good support system that gets them into bigger paying jobs. So we've got too many people in not higher paying jobs and not enough taxes to be taken from them. These are issues we don't have a constitutional direction, rule, insight to. We just don't really have one. And that's why we have a situation where at the end of the day, America's got a problem. It's got a big money problem. Some billionaires are saying it is potential, but unlikely, that we could outgrow it. Some of them are saying that it is potential, but unlikely that we could outgrow this problem. I don't know about you, but when AI hits, right, I don't think we're going to be seeing more human workers. Okay. Another thing, you see a lot of people not having kids now. How would they ever afford them? Okay, let's just take a moment here. Let's take a moment and look. And I have a question for you guys. How many of you, if you were to have a child, human child, male or female, whatever you want, okay? If you were to have a child, or I guess I have to put in there the other option, male, female, or another option, right? If you were to, I'm not getting into that. If you were to have a child, okay? If you were to have a child, because I know people are going to explode in the comments about that. We're going to stay away from that. If you were to have a child right now, would you be able to afford the upbringing of that child? I look at it. I think I would barely be able to afford one child. I think realistically, I would be able to afford one child, and that's with no special stuff, no private school, no this, no that, none of that stuff. I just wouldn't be able to do it because it would be far too expensive. Now, granted, I'm a disability attorney. I'm America's most viewed, subscribed to, clicked on, But disability attorneys, we don't make much, which is why a lot of disability attorneys, not saying me, but I'm saying a lot of the other ones, they don't do much on the claims because there's not much money to be made. So the bottom line is, it's one of the situations where a lot of people hire these big box firms and then they're like, what the hell? They didn't do anything. You know what I mean? There's a causal connection there. But let me ask you. So I'm seeing here, Lisa said definitely not. Robert said nope. Ghost said nope, I can't even eat. Frenny said, I'm worn out now. I can't add to anything. K. Sothy said, yes, AL will require UBI. Someone explain that to me. Yeah, that's going to be accurate. Delta said, I'm a boomer and have a kid that is a Gen Z. That's spicy. That's tricky. That's very tricky. But I bet you got all the TV channels with all the different, bet you're paying for that one. Yeah. Princess Diana, who's royalty on this channel, very important person. She said, no, absolutely not, assuming I could have kids too old. So the bottom line is this. Boomers couldn't afford kids. Next generation down, they're at the height of their earning capacity. They could potentially afford kids. A lot of millennials can't afford kids. People younger than that will not be able to afford kids. They won't. So what's the trick? If people can't afford to have children, some of them are going to have lots of kids and use that as a welfare gain. Some of them are going to have no kids because they realize they don't want to bring a kid up in a situation where they can't afford to actually have the child have a more successful life. And both sides are fine. If you want to have a bunch of kids and use welfare, that's fine. You know what I mean? It is what it is. I don't know if America's going to always be able to afford it, but it's a way of life. The other alternative is, you know what I mean? You work really hard and potentially make enough to have one child. You can't have half a child. That's just, I haven't figured that one out. They can't do that one. So point is, it's just, that's the situation we're in. That's the problem. That's why they want to look at these bank accounts. That's why they want to see what you've got, because they want to see if you can be a part of the solution as the Titanic begins to, basically nose under the water. So, all right. Anyways, I will catch you all a little bit later. You have a wonderful, wonderful day. Attorney Walter Hnot. Please remember to like and subscribe. Please remember to like and subscribe. A lot of you guys don't, and that's okay. But if you could hit that like button, I'd super appreciate it. Also, head over to Google and type in the business name. I've worked here for almost 12 years. September 23rd will be 12 years. So I'm probably going to buy a cake and then, eat it. So I'm just, it'll be a nice moment. I'll probably do like a cake thing. I'll do a video on it, but that'll be 12 years of owning a law firm. If you could go, Disability Resolution Law Firm or Disability Resolution Florida, throw some stars up there if you want to, totally up to you. With that said, I go live on Mondays and Thursdays. I did not go live, I think, on Thursday. I went live on Friday, but I'll try to go live this weekend and answer questions for people. It's just, I don't know if you guys know, but it kind of wears me out to do those because it's rapid fire, tough questions. I do it, but it's tricky. And remember, too, you understand something. I think I'm one of the few attorneys that actually takes live calls. All the other attorneys, so what they do is they have them on screen. They have an assistant feeding them law, right? Feeding them case law stuff off screen. And then they send to the attorney specific questions that they can answer while it's all going on. I think I'm the only insane person that basically goes live and answers questions, just winging it, getting it done. But I've also been doing this and have an unhealthy relationship with Social Security at this point. So that's how I like to put it. Now, with that said, if you want to go ahead and do a consultation, like a longer one with me, where you got some weird legal issue with Social Security, like an overpayment or there's an OIG thing going on, down below in the comment or in the bio, you can go ahead and grab that. We're doing full hours and half hours now. All right. I'll catch you a little bit later. You have a wonderful, wonderful day, and we will rock and roll from there. Thank you so much, Attorney Walter Hnot. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.